Thanks for joining into Next Level Contractor. I'm Michael Bourgeois, and our mission here at Next Level Contractor is to take new contractors, people that have just gotten their license, just started their business, or maybe you've been in business for a while and you're trying to figure out how to get it to the next level. But the mission is to take brand new contractors and help them and guide them step by step through the process of going from day one to the 2 year mark without becoming a statistic, from $0 to $1 million without well, there's no way to avoid obstacles and challenges, but with guidance to overcome the obstacles and challenges that you're going to run into along the journey from brand new business owner to established company. Today we have with us as a guest Linda Galveo from One Insurance Solutions. Linda is a superstar in the insurance industry. She has 20 years of experience in insurance. 10 years she's been specializing in commercial and contractor insurance. She's licensed in 40 different states, and she can serve just about anybody that is watching this video or is listening to this recording right now. So, Linda, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure, Michael.
Linda, I know you're really busy, and I don't want to take up a lot of your time on this show, on this podcast. We typically just get right to it. So we have some questions that have come in, and if you don't mind, I'm just going to fire away.
Absolutely.
All right, fantastic. It's well understood that contractors have to. There's a legal requirement to carry insurance,
Mhm.
and I'm sure the requirements are slightly different for each individual state, and probably a little different from one license to the next. But outside of the legal requirement, why would contractors carry insurance? I mean, what are some of the most common insurance claims that contractors face?
Great question. With contractors, they need general liability. General liability typically helps them against these claims for, certain things like damage to other people's property, bodily injuries to other. Typically, general liability doesn't cover the contractor, it covers everybody else. It covers your customers' properties. Um, Hazardous, if you leave your tools around and somebody trips over that, that's a hazard. Unfortunately, that's what happens. It covers bodily injuries to others, water damage, just things like that. It really could devastate somebody's business if they're just starting out, if they have no capital. So this coverage helps them be protected and helps protect their business.
I could see that destroying a new contractor's business if they're not covered. Yeah. So, I mean, I hopefully this doesn't happen often, at least. But yeah, if there was a brand new contractor that got some insurance and decided after they got licensed that they didn't need to carry it anymore, that's a terrible idea, right? I mean, because if something actually happens, I mean, you're in deep trouble at that point.
Well,
So,
it's true. It's true. And the thing is I always tell everyone with every aspect of insurance, nobody ever needs it until they need it.
and that's
They
the
don't
truth.
think they need it. Why do I need this? It's some people think it's expensive, some people don't, but you do need it because it protects you. You don't want your whole business to go down the tubes for a small, something that happened. A plumber, you know, cuts into something and ends up causing water damage to a customer's house. Well, they're covered for that now.
Right. So pennies on the dollar, and covers you for hundreds of thousands of dollars in accidental damage, bodily injury, stuff like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I believe it's crucial for your business.
A must. Absolutely. So, um, okay. Well, can you explain the types of insurance liability for different contractors?
Sure. Well, most contractors, actually all of them, if you have a business, general liability is number one. You need that coverage. It's a third party bodily injury. So, in other words, it doesn't cover you, it covers everybody else.
Okay.
Property damage, personal injury claims. It protects from financial loss, period. That is the main source of insurance for a business. But there's also another one called professional liability. And what that does, it protects your work. So, in other words, it's an errors and omissions type of thing. So, professional liability and errors and omissions are basically the same. It protects from claims for your professional negligence. If you're a carpenter, if you're doing siding, different things like that, that is a crucial also because that protects you if something happens to the work that you do. Okay.
Oh, so can I ask a question about that? Let me just get this straight. So, general liability insurance covers someone, not you, the contractor, but covers any other person from getting, or, well, if someone gets injured, it pays for the medical coverage if someone gets hurt. Is that correct? Or a
Yes.
potential lawsuit if someone gets hurt,
And property damage.
and property damage if you
Yes, it
damage
covers
someone's
property
property.
damage, property damage, injury. So personal injuries, bodily injury, property damage, that's general liability. It
Okay,
protects the other people that you're working for.
got it. So it protects your customer
Yes,
from you damaging their property or them getting injured on the job site.
exactly.
Whether negligent or not, if they get injured on your job site, it covers their medical expenses or if they sue you. Now, professional liability insurance, this is interesting. It sounds to me like professional liability insurance, which I don't know if that's a requirement, right? So this is something that you would want to do just intelligently. It sounds like it sounds like poor workmanship is not covered under general liability insurance. Is that correct? It sounds like
That's correct. So
okay.
your work is not covered. So
So if you were to
professional
do
liability covers your jobs, your
s-
work.
okay, so general liability covers if like while you're doing the work, you damage something. Professional liability might be something where you didn't realize that you forgot to seal something properly, and 6 months to a year later, there's damage to the property because it leaked or whatever. I'm just thinking in terms of, up on a roof, you don't seal something correctly, water intrusion occurs, mold happens, wood rot, and this is way after the job is done. So that's what professional liability insurance covers?
Yeah, it's professional negligence. So let's use a cabinet person. You put
Okay.
cabinets up in someone's kitchen and you leave, everything's done, and they're in their kitchen putting things away and the cabinet falls off the wall. Things like that, or putting in
Oh,
countertops
wow.
or
General liability
siding.
insurance wouldn't cover that?
No,
Wow.
no.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I did not know that. Wow, that is
General liability will cover you while you're there if you damage something. If you're putting up wallboard and you cut into the wall to cut open a hole and you cut their pipe, that's the type of thing general liability would cover, other than them getting hurt from tripping over your saw or things like that. Professional liability is your workmanship. It covers
wow.
against your professional workmanship.
So a week after the fact, a year after the fact, 5 years after the fact.
There are certain limits,
Okay.
definitely certain limits. There's certain uh, limits
A
in
statute of
time.
limitation there. Okay.
Yes, but it definitely would do that.
Right, like normal
And
wear and tear, of course, yeah, it wouldn't cover or
exactly. You can't come
extreme
back 5
equipment.
years later and say, "Hey, the door fell off my cabinet," because that would have no statute of that limitation is, all over. But within a certain reason of time, your workmanship is covered with
Got
professional
it.
liability.
That is huge. I was once so quick story. I know a company that um, installs solar panels, rooftop solar, and
Okay.
they did they did not follow the manufacturer's specifications, and it was so. in the end, it was an improper installation that caused a leak on a roof, which is where my
Oh,
head went when we were talking when you were
yeah.
explaining what professional liability insurance, and their insurance company said that they don't cover workmanship, and I didn't understand that until just now when you explained to me that because this was years later that it was discovered that there had been a slow leak, and now there's rotten rafters and there's rotten decking, and I didn't realize what was going on, because I'm hearing the story and, my buddy's telling me about it,
Mm,
and I'm thinking, "How does your insurance not cover this? What are they talking about?" And
right.
it's because he had general liability insurance and not professional liability insurance.
Exactly. And people don't, the contractors don't realize that, because they're at the beginning, they're, a little tight with funding and finances. But later on, when you're in the business for a while and you have some, good finances coming through, it's really, really something that I suggest because you do not realize what, and I try to explain to them what is covered and what isn't under the general liability. The professional liability is huge when you want to make sure that your workmanship is covered as well.
Gotcha. Wow. Yeah, that's well, I mean, I'm gonna reach out to my friend and see if he knows what to do. I'm actually the contractor that's handling the repairs on that same job. So I'm in close contact with this solar contractor that is having to pay for this. So
Oh, wow.
I am going to pass him your information, Linda.
Well,
If
thank you.
that works for you.
Be my
Uh,
pleasure.
Okay. Um, what other types of insurance, does a contractor need to know about? I'm all ears now.
All right. So here's another one. So general liability, professional liability, there's commercial property insurance. Now, what that is if you rent your office. So I like to look at it as here's general liability, and then there's a program you can get into called BOP. It's a business owner's policy. Okay. What
Mm,
that does is it rolls your general liability and your commercial together. So this commercial property covers the building that you're in, not the, if you own it, that's a different story, but this is your renter. And sometimes the landlord will want you to have it. If something is caused by you on the inside, you want to make sure that's taken care of. But
mm.
it takes care of your tools, any materials that you store there against fire, theft, vandalism, or any natural disaster. So it's like a renter's policy on your business. So I like to call it a BOP. It's a business owner's policy that rolls both of those together. You can get them separate, but you can also get it in a bundle.
Does it save money in a bundle?
Yes, it does. Yes, it
Well, there
does.
you go. No brainer there.
Yep.
Okay, so general liability insurance, back to that, it's amazing how much it does not cover, and
Hmm.
that's probably not something that a lot of contractors are aware of. I bet there's brand new contractors watching this or listening to this right now that only have general liability insurance and nothing else, and are just walking around without a care in the world, thinking that whatever they do for the entirety of their business is covered, right? And
Exactly.
it's not. It's not. All they have is insurance to cover if they break something on the job or if someone gets hurt on the job. Is that right?
Exactly. And I try to,
Well,
and that's, I consider myself an educator sometimes. I feel like when I'm with them, talking to them, also sending them information, when I send the policy, I just let them know I want you to know exactly what your general liability covers
mm,
because they don't know. I don't even know if some of the bigger companies actually know what that actually covers because they are required to have it. You go to a job, they want the certificate showing that you have general liability, but they don't really know what that actually entails sometimes.
right. I mean, you hear, okay, I've got general liability insurance, I'm covered, right?
Exactly.
That's the extent of the thought that goes into it for most people, I'm sure, especially because it's overwhelming when you're starting a company. So that's really nice that you're able to educate people on, how much coverage general liability actually provides, which it sounds like, I mean, it's a lot of coverage, but it's not near enough if you're if you're really in business. Wow. So, what about workers' comp insurance?
Yep, that's the next one. Workman's comp, workers' comp. It's, obviously it covers the employees if they get hurt. You can cover the owner. So there's two different ways. Most of the time,
Okay.
the contractors will get their workers' comp and it doesn't cover them, it only covers their workers. But they have to know that it doesn't cover subcontractors, it only covers direct W 2 employees.
Gotcha. Now, would general liability insurance cover a worker?
No, covers
Ooh.
other people, not your employees. It covers
Gotcha.
the customers, basically.
Got it. Not the subcontractors either.
No, none of your policy covers subcontractors. When you're a
They
contractor
have to
and
have
you're
their
going
own
to deal
policy.
with that, you got to make sure that your subcontractors, and you should get the certificates and have at least the same coverage as you or higher. Because what contractors don't know sometimes is if something happens from a subcontractor doing
Mhm,
work
mhm.
and they're not properly covered, everything rolls up. They can go after you as well. And they don't realize just because you hire a
And they would.
subcontractor.
Any lawyer would.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, any lawyer of any kind would definitely. So you gotta make sure your subcontractors have their own insurance and have their own workers' compensation, right?
Absolutely. And I would check it. Don't just assume that they give you a certificate that it's, you want to make sure that they are covered, because we have seen in the past that they get their insurance for a couple of months and then they stop and they don't have it any longer. And you get the certificate, but it's not valid anymore. It could happen. I don't
Oh,
say that it
yeah.
happens often, but
Well, absolutely, you have to get that right, and if a subcontractor gives you a hard time about it, I say find a new subcontractor.
absolutely. You want to protect your business at all costs.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, pouring all your blood, sweat, and tears into it just to have some subcontractor without insurance, get it all taken away for,
Exactly.
getting injured. No way. All right. Well, man, that was something right there. That professional liability insurance is certainly a new one on me. So because I was hearing that story, from my friend, and it was blowing my mind. I was like, "What do you mean they don't cover it? What are you talking about? They don't cover it? Why do you
Exactly.
have insurance? What's it all for?" But now I know. Now I know. So okay. I mean, well, there was a question that said, why do we need liability insurance? But I think we covered that one.
Oh, sure.
So, like, what is a couple of ways we touched on this a little bit? Like, what are some ways? How can uninsured subcontractors create liability issues, and what's the best way to protect yourself? Right? Like, I mean, we know they can get injured, but I mean, like, if they damage the customer's property, does your general liability insurance cover that?
No.
Jeez. S
So it it could, but typically if you hire a subcontractor, they are contractors. They're their own entity. They're their own business. They all should have the same when they're on the job, they need their general liability as well because they should be covered. You're not on the job, so your insurance is not going to cover somebody else walking over there and tripping over something. So they all have to be professionally covered as well. If they go, you hire, let's use this an example. You hire a subcontractor to go in and put in a floor.
Mm.
Well, customers walking around the house to check it out and they trip and fall over your saw. Your insurance is not going to cover that person. It's the subcontractor's insurance has to cover that person. But if they sue because they broke their leg in so many places and your subcontractor isn't adequately covered, now it's going to roll up and they are going to go after you. It's going to be a
Wow.
battle. So
Wow.
you want to make sure they're covered as much as you are. If you have $1 million in coverage and they only have 300,000 in coverage, you shouldn't even have them on your books.
because the attorneys will, I'm how does that all work? I mean, I've never sued anyone and I've never been sued. So I don't really know how it
Me
all
either, thank
works.
God.
Right, there you go. Uh, but I know it happens. I know it happens every day, and I know that attorneys have a way of finding out who has what. And so if like what you said, if a subcontractor has 300 and you have a million, um, I mean, would an attorney have a way to find out that you have a million and the sub has 300, and instead of going after 300, they say they want 800 because
Oh,
they know
sure.
there's how do they find that out?
Just by your policy. They can
So
request copies of your policy, and in the policy, it shows what your coverage is. However, most of them have a clause that if you hire subcontractors, they need to have equal to or more than you have.
gotcha.
It's a
Okay.
contractual violation if you do not hire a subcontractor that has equal or more.
Oh, that's important. That's a really important detail. So if you hire a subcontractor, if in your contract for insurance, it says that you hire a subcontractor that carries a lesser policy than what you have, then you have violated your contract and now your insurance does not have to cover.
Exactly. They
Whoa.
could deny any claim because you are in violation of that contract.
That is super serious. So
Mhm.
so that leaves you just totally liable, or your company anyway. It leaves your company totally liable
Vulnerable, very vulnerable
for any
to
expenses.
anything.
They just
You're
sue your
asking
company
for things.
directly, and then your company owes.
Yeah, and you're not covered. So if you get into that situation, which I hope that never happens for anyone,
Right.
but if that happens, it could devastate your business completely.
It surely could. Um, all right. Well, when you're, I mean, is the only way for you as a contractor to find out if your subcontractor's policy is, up to date and covers as much as yours? Is it requesting it from them, or can you request it directly from their insurance company to check up to make sure that the document that you got from them is legitimate?
Yeah, good practice. Don't just get the certificate from the contractor. If you have somebody in your office or you do your own office work, I know that the new contractors probably do it on their own. You need to see what they have, what their coverage days are, what dates they're valid. And I would call the insurance company. You have every right to call the insurance company and make sure that insurance is still in place.
Okay, so the insurance company will talk to you about their client just
Oh,
just
yes,
to
I get phone
verify.
calls like that all the time.
Okay. Okay, gotcha. Well, that's good to know, right? So you can do your own cross-checking to make sure. And again, I mean, I trust everybody. It's just that you see it on the news every day, this unscrupulous contractor and that unscrupulous contractor. And so you never really know what somebody's trying to get away with. That's just the world we live in. So
Well,
I
sure. Sure, you can find a certificate of insurance anywhere and, just fill it out. It's you need to do your due diligence and make sure that they're actually covered and they're covered for, the amounts that need to be covered because it is in all insurance policies.
Yeah, and I guess you need to check your own policy to see if there's that clause in there that says that your sub has to carry the same amount of insurance that you have or more.
Mm,
Otherwise, you're in violation. Because
absolutely.
again, I mean, you might just think everything is totally fine and you're all covered for this job because you have insurance and your subcontractor has insurance. But little do you know that because they carry 100,000 less than you, you're not covered at all.
Right. If
I
that's a violation, a lawyer will find a way.
Oh, I know that's the truth. Again, thankfully, yeah, I've never been sued, never sued anybody. But I know plenty of people that have been sued, and I know people that have sued other people. So I don't ever want to get into that game.
Uh, uh,
Wow.
yeah, I have a little quick story. I had
Sure.
a years ago, it was not a customer of mine, a customer of a previous owner of a insurance agency. This person had a business. He did not technically run his business out of his home. However, his garage where he had his office caught on fire. Okay. Burnt the garage down completely and burnt a little bit of the house. Homeowners would not cover it because he was running his business out of his house and it wasn't stated in his policy.
Oh, man.
So that's another question I always ask. If you have a home office, if you have, your office outside, you need to make sure that you let your homeowner's insurance also know that you run your business out of your house. In office, also, you can't even, they'll ask in the application if you store any products, things like that. You have to be very, very aware of what is going on in that aspect. So their garage and some of their house burned and they were not covered.
Oh, man. I mean, is there like a significant cost difference if you were to tell the insurance company that you operate your business out of your home?
Depends on what you do. If it's just a home office, it may not even change. It won't,
Got it.
it probably wouldn't change. But if you're, you use your garage and you're building cabinets and, you're doing different things, that would be different. But that's where you can add something to your commercial
Gotcha.
you know,
Okay, right. If you're carrying inventory and, storing materials and if there's a lot to lose, I got you. But
absolutely, absolutely.
if it's just where you do your paperwork, probably not a big deal.
Yeah, that wouldn't make any difference. But this was a little, they found out afterwards that he was storing machinery in the garage that wasn't stated and nothing got covered. So you just have to, I try to ask a lot of questions and find out, if they have a home office, what are you actually doing there?
This episode of the Next Level Contractor is sponsored by One Insurance Solutions, the go-to insurance agency dedicated to helping contractors secure affordable coverage. Specializing in general liability, workers' compensation, and even life insurance, they understand the unique needs of contractors. As a sister company to One Exam Prep, you can trust them to support you every step of the way. Get a free, no obligation quote today at www.oneinsurancesolutions.com or call 1 877 700 0243. Man. um, so I actually used to work for a contractor that got sued. I mean, I can't tell. I'd never seen somebody get sued as much as this contractor did in the
Oh
really
wow.
short period of time. I mean, they were in business 20 years, and
Mhm.
so I mean, they went 19 without being sued, and then they had it was like one bad year. It was actually during COVID.
Wow.
It was one bad year and they lost a whole lot of really highly trained staff. And this is unrelated to a home-based business, by the way. It's a complete change of subject, but it's an insurance
Mhm.
story. So or a lawsuit story. And so they had all this I guess you'd call it institutional knowledge, where they've had employees that worked for the company for years and years and years and knew all kinds of stuff. And they had to let a bunch of people go. So then it was a whole bunch of new crews that they had out there.
Oh wow.
Because their workload was just full, right? They were running 5 crews and then suddenly they were down to one crew. And then things started to open back up and everybody wanted their projects done and all these contracts were signed. So they had fulfillment issues where they had to get the work done because they were obligated to a timeline. And so they had to just hire as fast as they could. And the training wasn't great. So there was about a year or so where the work quality was not up to par. And it took a while for the workmanship stuff to be discovered that it wasn't great. And so I just remember um like subpoenas coming in, It was
Oh,
like
wow.
4 different subpoenas all within a, 1 quarter, and, their insurance saved them. I mean, their insurance saved them from going out of business, because of, really no faults of their own. There's only they did everything they possibly could to, fulfill these contracts. They did everything by the book. If they hired subs, they did check for insurance. I mean, everything
Good.
was by the book. It's just that, you know, because they've been around for so long and they're so large and they had so many contracts, that this unforeseen sort of layoffs that they had to do, they just never planned for that. And so they had guys out there that didn't have the same, either training or didn't have the same idea of quality in their mind for what, constitutes high level work. And if it weren't for their insurance, they would go out, they'd be out of business right now. There's no way they would have been able to, afford multiple lawsuits all in the same few months. It was
Yeah,
nuts. I had never seen anything like that.
that's crazy. That's could be devastating.
Oh, yeah, I was worried for them. I was like, "Man, I don't even know if these guys are gonna be able to make it through this," but they had enough insurance. They do a lot of government contracts, so they're required to carry, millions of dollars of insurance anyway, because they do a lot of stuff on military bases. So, I mean, that's what saved them. That is what saved them was
Yeah.
the insurance policies. So, I know I'm a believer in insurance.
I hear you. I try to educate my clients that way and let them know that this will save you someday. It will save you. I know it seems like you don't really need it. I mean, just with car insurance, everything else, people don't think they need it until something happens, and then you do. So
So
make sure you're protected, 100%.
absolutely. So what are some factors to consider when choosing contractor insurance?
As in,
Okay. So, does it have to do with the nature of your work?
oh, yeah, okay. So yeah, definitely. So you want to make sure that you're covered for your particular trade as well. There's different types of risks for different types of contractors. A roofing contractor may not need the same thing as a plumber or an electrician. So you want it customized to your specific business. Absolutely. You also have to consider the legal in your area, the statutes, the requirements that, there's each state has a different requirement and there's a different minimum. And a lot of, again, if you're beginning, they try to go with the lowest. And I try to sway them away from that, to make sure that they're covered properly, because even though you're just starting, you don't know what kind of a job you're going to get. And you want to make sure you're covered properly. So always be adequately covered, but make sure you're at least meeting your state requirement. The other thing that would help is the limits and deductibles that may help lower the cost. Most of the time, when you get a general liability policy, there's not a deductible depending on what your risk is. In Florida, roofing is a huge um, insurance issue, so they have higher limits for roofers, but deductibles can help you lower your premiums a little bit.
Gotcha.
When you want to make sure that you're going after a really good, when you get an insurance policy, it's an A+ rated company. You want to make sure that they follow their claims procedures very well, things like that. And, make sure your insurance agent knows what they're talking about.
I'll say, I'll say, I mean, I've had insurance for, honestly, I don't know how many years, different types of business insurance and general liability insurance. And today is the first I've heard of professional liability insurance. No one has ever, not one insurance agent ever in all my years has said to me, "Hey, by the way, your policy does not cover workmanship down the road." I
Wow.
No one's ever said that. So well, that's why you're here. That's why you're here on this podcast right now, because you know what we need to know. So I appreciate that, Linda. Thanks for sharing that for sure.
You're
I
very
mean,
welcome.
that is. several $1 million worth of information, honestly, in one sentence. Like, hey, professional liability insurance covers workmanship, general liability does not. Unbelievable. I just can't believe I'd never heard of it until now. That's wild. So you obviously are very knowledgeable and you care about what you do.
I do.
That you would bother to say that, because nobody else told me. So
Oh, well, I'm glad I helped you, Michael.
I'm telling you, you did. So okay, so how can uninsured subcontractors create liability issues, and what's the best way to protect yourself? I think we covered it a lot, but I feel like that's, I mean, what are
Yeah, that's
it's like I
huge
just
for
want a
me.
big red warning flag, like, hey, protect yourself, because I could picture contractors having, friendly relationships with their subcontractors, and subcontractors, maybe they don't have the insurance, or maybe you feel bad about asking for the insurance or making them prove it again and again and again. It's like, hey, I just gave it to you on the last project. You want to see it again? But I mean, I
Right.
could see that happening.
Yeah. I to You need to, obviously know your subcontractors, know their reputation. Definitely the insurance is in my book is numero uno. Keep accurate records. If you're going to hire the same subcontractor over and over and over, you have their certificate, and if you lose it, or something happens and it's gone, if they have to give it to you 10 times, they have to give it to you 10 times, but not just giving you that piece of paper. You need to make sure that the coverage is active. That is huge, huge, because a certificate is a piece of paper. You need to do your own due diligence and make sure that the coverage is active, because you are giving yourself a huge liability by just grabbing a piece of paper and assuming that they're actually covered.
Right, you have to do that. I mean, you've got to absolutely got to do that, right?
Mhm.
I knew a guy that worked for one contractor for like 15 years, and I mean, the business owner would have trusted this guy with his life. And then one day, business owner was just driving through a neighborhood on a Saturday and saw his guy, um, his main subcontractor,
Wow.
and saw him working on this house that was the business owner's customer, and then ended up having a conversation with the guy, and the guy admitted to him that he had actually gone behind the business owner's back, behind the prime contractor's back, and taken money under the table from this customer, to do projects. And it was just, so you just never know, right? So I mean, you've got to follow up and you've got to check on people, because you just don't know, if they've paid their bills, if they've got up to date insurance. I mean, you just never know. You got
Yeah,
to protect yourself.
yeah. Never assume that that piece of paper is valid. You don't want to insult anyone, obviously, but you just you don't you take the paper and you need to call that insurance company. You have to call and make sure it's valid and the dates that it's valid, to make sure it's your business. You need to protect it.
Yeah, and if it insults your subcontractor, so be it.
Yeah.
So
This
be
is
it. I
my
tell you,
yeah,
if it insults your subcontractor that you're protecting yourself, you probably have the wrong subcontractor.
exactly.
I
And
mean,
that
that's what I would say.
subcontractor should do the same. He may hire somebody to, help him out with something. He should make sure that his people have adequate coverage as well. And everybody needs to make sure they protect themselves. Nobody else is going to do it.
Yeah, that subcontractor should, I mean, be proud to show you his up-to-date insurance certificate. Like, here
Mhm.
you go, man. There it is. I'm your guy. Boom, there it is. If
Exactly.
that's not the attitude, then that's the wrong attitude.
Yeah. You want to have a reputable subcontractor because you know that their work is going to be quality and they take pride in their work as well.
Sure. I mean, if I'm ever having to question somebody that's doing work on my job site or on one of my projects, they're not, I mean, I'm just not gonna work with them for long, because 'cause I'm not gonna live in this, like, the shroud of mystery of whether or not, I'm protected.
Yeah,
Absolutely not.
absolutely. You want to protect your business is your business and you want to protect it at all costs.
So how can a person like reduce their premiums? Like we're talking about a lot of insurance, right? And everybody knows that insurance, it's worth it, but it doesn't change the fact that it is an expense, right? And
Sure.
so for new business owners, every expense is a big expense, right? When you have no money, it doesn't matter if it's 1,000 or 1,000,000. It might as well all be 1,000,000. So what are some ways to get those premiums down?
Well, a good practice would be to bundle. If you're going to have, make sure at the beginning you want, the like I said, that BOP. If you want the professional and the general at the same time, if you
What do
bundle
you
those together,
recommend, Linda? I mean, honest, I know we're talking like theoretically and hypothetically. What is your recommendation that people carry a contractor?
I believe they should have both
The whole deal.
professional
So
and
the
general.
general, the professional, and the commercial.
If they rent their own space, it depends. If they're just running their office paperwork again out of their home, mostly the commercial is going to cover them for if they rent outside of their home. You want
Okay.
it's a requirement by the landlord that you have this particular commercial policy if you rent an office outside or a warehouse. You have your stock and your tools and everything in here, and day to day you're going in and out of there taking it. That's a different policy. But for somebody starting out, professional and general liability would be my recommendation to everyone, because I can bundle those together in one policy and add that on. It would save money, but it would be a higher cost, but would it be way more protection?
Gotcha. So yeah, I mean, if you can afford it, then go for everything.
Yeah.
If you need it. Well, unless you don't need the bop, I guess. But I can't imagine anybody not needing the bop. Because we're contractors, so we all have. I mean, at minimum, there's $1,000 worth of tools that every single one of us has out there.
Well, you can get a separate policy for that too without having the bot. So when you
Oh,
have a general liability policy, you can add an inland marine policy, which will cover tools. You can
what's
get
it
a
called?
inland marine.
Inland marine
Yeah,
policy.
that is a policy that will cover your tools. And you can add that on for very, very low cost. It's like
Oh,
a 5,000, 10,000, 25. It goes on up, but you could get, a minimal policy when you're first starting to cover your tools.
just covers your tools. So you got your general liability, which is a legal requirement for every state that I know of for a contractor to carry. Um, and then you've got your workers' comp, or if it's just you by yourself, you may do the workers' comp exemption.
Sure.
So that's covered. So then it's professional liability insurance to me is
Hmm.
absolute must. And then if you need the BOP, which is the commercial policy, get it. But if you don't need the commercial policy, and you just want your tools covered, the stuff that you use every day, to make your money, then there's a separate policy for that. Good to
Hmm.
know. It's like a
Yep.
property insurance policy, but
Yeah.
personal property or the business property, the
And
tools.
it
Yeah.
would cover a laptop or a computer as well, because that's part of your everyday, if you use that to do your estimates, different things like that, that would be covered in that policy as
Gotcha.
well.
And that's huge. I mean, I'm sure I I guarantee that the general policy that people have, the general liability policy that people have, they have no idea how little it covers. I mean, that
Mm.
is it sounds to me like that is the bare bones minimum. And it makes sense why the law requires you to have it. That way, if somebody gets hurt or you damage somebody else's property, um, those people are protected. But it doesn't really thoroughly protect you as the contractor. So you really need to have professional liability and this inland marine policy that will replace your tools if they get stolen or lost, right?
Exactly. Or broken. There's
Or
policies that'll cover
broken.
them if they break.
I mean, I've never dropped a tool off a ladder. Wink. But I know
Yeah,
people that
me
have.
either.
Yeah, I know people that have. So, yeah, that's a really good point. Okay. So, is there like what can people do? So let's say you're in business. Is there like a discount you can get for having a good business record? You know how like auto insurance policies, if you're a good driver, it's cheaper. If you're a bad driver, it's more expensive. Do you have um does commercial insurance industry have ways to rate whether or not a business owner deserves a discount on their policy or not?
It would be more costly if you had claims. They don't per se give you a discount for not having claims,
But they
but the
will raise
more
your
claims
rate.
you have, the higher your policy will go.
Gotcha. So,
And that's a question on the application. Have you ever had any claims in the past 3 years, 5 years? They will go by that and they want to know the amount. That also has a huge difference.
gotcha. So it's not like just because you have insurance, then you can be careless on the job because you have to have insurance no matter what. So insurance will just cover whatever. Every time you make a claim, you run the risk of increased premiums and insurance costing you more. So there's a lot of financial incentive to do everything you possibly can to avoid having to use your insurance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean,
Got it.
even with workers' comp, I've seen people have their rates go up because somebody cut their finger and went to the doctor, and it was just a stitch that that person wanted it to be covered by his workman's comp, and the owner, obviously, that's a claim.
That's a
So,
claim.
you know, I would have, in that case, probably an unnecessary claim, but the worker wanted to use it, so he did, and now
Mm,
that increases your premium. So anything you can do to keep your claims down will help you in the long run.
yeah, absolutely. Man, that's yeah, I mean, I've just I my mind is just filled with so many instances where, people got so lucky. A guy cut his finger, and he happened to be a military veteran, and it was so nice of him. He went to the VA hospital and got himself stitched up. I mean, it cut, like, all the way down into his thumb, into the palm of his thumb here. And he went to the VA hospital and said, "Don't worry about the workers' comp claim." Saved this contractor's behind big
Yes.
time, 'cause he didn't have to make a claim. So and, but yeah, that coulda gone a different way completely. How
Yeah,
much I
I
mean
think that's a great idea. And, if it's not going to be something, like I said, that cut finger could have been easily taken care of. Um, you know, it
right.
helps the
Guy shoulda
person
just
not
super
to have to
glued
have
it.
the claim. Yeah,
Just kidding.
absolutely.
Not really. But yeah, I mean, I get yeah, I mean, I get maybe it would've been cheaper if the, business owner had just kinda paid for it out of pocket versus making a claim.
Right.
Because those premiums will be up for probably a long time, and it'll cost way more than just paying for those stitches out of pocket.
Exactly. Exactly. And it was minor. When I say minor, it was a little cut on the finger.
Mm, so
But
be
that's why I say
careful.
just, think about it when you're
Well,
getting ready to put in a claim.
I imagine the hospital or the doctor's office, as soon as they heard it was a workers' comp claim, it went from Neosporin to, "Oh, lord, we
Major
gotta get
surgery.
you're gonna need X-rays, you're probably gonna need a CAT scan." I mean,
Exactly.
have we done the MRI yet? I mean, it probably
Yeah,
went, like, through the roof because
I
now
know.
now it's a workers' comp claim, so I've
Exactly.
seen that
Oh,
happen
yeah.
too. I broke my foot one time, at work, and I went into just like an urgent care, and they were like, "No big deal. Oh, yeah, it's broken." They did X-rays, right? No big deal, no problem. They said, "Just tie your shoe really tight." That's what I mean, they said professional basketball players break their feet all the time. It was the 5th metatarsal, which is like it's the pinky bone, but in the foot.
Oh, yeah. They can't do
And they were like,
anything to
yeah,
that.
they were like, "Basketball players roll their feet all the time. They play with sprained ankles, they play with broken ankles." And I'm like, "Well, thanks for thinking that I'm comparable to a pro basketball
Yeah, that's
player."
right.
So, I used to work out in high school, so I could see how you would put me there. But, yeah, I tied my shoe real tight for the next couple of days, and then the business owner went to make a claim. This is when I was really, really young. This is probably 20 years ago. The business owner wanted workers' comp to pay for the urgent care. So he sent him all the information, and then all of a sudden, the the workers' comp company demanded that I go see another doctor, their doctor, and then their doctor did more X-rays and put me in this huge boot. And so, and it like sent me out with this huge boot and crutches and follow-up visits that were required. It was so it went from okay, this is just, cash pay at the urgent care facility. You're fine. Tie your shoe real tight. You're fine. To, oh man, you can't put any pressure on that thing. Like, you're going to need some sort of insurance coverage to pay your bill while you're recovering. You got to wear a boot. You got to have crutches. I mean, it was crazy the difference when it went from paying out of pocket to workers' comp. It was insane. So yeah, I imagine his premiums probably went up after that because that was expensive for him.
Oh,
Um,
sure.
and
I'm
it wasn't
sure.
me doing it. It was just like, uh-oh, now what? So I can't imagine. So yeah, I mean, any possible thing to avoid a claim is best, wouldn't you say?
I would, definitely, and have some, safety measures in place. Also, that seems kind of menial. People don't really realize, but have some, have some kind of safety measures. If, you know, some people just don't pay attention, and you need to pay attention. When you're working and you have
Right.
people working.
I mean,
You know,
follow the OSHA guidelines. Nobody likes to. I'll tell you, nobody likes to tie off when they're up high. Nobody likes to tie
oh,
off.
I know.
Right? You trip over the ropes. I mean, everyone hates it, myself
Yeah.
included. If I'm gonna fall on a roof, it's because I tripped over the safety rope, you know?
Exactly. Exactly, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
so
trying to
yeah.
be safe, but it ends up hurting me anyway. But,
Right, how'd you fall off a roof? I tripped over the safety rope, but it did save my life afterwards, you
I
know?
do know a lot of, like, plastering, professionals, and I cannot tell you how many times they tell me that they stand on a milk crate to reach higher, and how many times
Yeah.
they stepped back the wrong way and the milk crate went flying and so didn't they. I don't know that that's in the guidelines at all to stand on a milk crate to get up there.
Probably
But
not.
it,
But, I mean, it sounds silly, but, I mean, that can kill you if you fall backwards and hit your head on a concrete
uh,
floor.
yeah,
And
or
that's really
even on
all
a
it takes.
cabinet or a countertop. I said, why in the world would you stand on a milk crate to reach something? You need to have the proper equipment, but because they do it for so long, you don't think about that. I said, but that is a huge liability, and if your guys are going to do that too, there you have it. So you're just asking for claims. Just try to do everything you can. I know it's difficult sometimes, but try to do everything you can not to have a claim.
Yeah, safety, safety, safety. I mean,
Yep.
nothing's more expensive than an injury, I think. I mean,
Hmm.
it is ridiculous what that costs years afterwards after if you
Oh
have to make
yeah,
a claim.
it could be something that somebody has to have taken care of for the rest of their life.
Well, yes, that. And I mean, I was just talking financially for your
Oh
business.
yeah.
Your business may feel that
Oh
the
yeah.
rest of its existence, the expense of something like that. Not to
Sure.
mention, yeah, I mean, obviously, that could be serious repercussions physically for someone.
Absolutely.
Well, Linda, thank you so much. I know we're out of time. I know you got a lot of work to do. I'm sure your phone's been ringing off the hook. So thanks for taking the time to be here with us today. How do we get a hold of you, Linda? How can someone get a hold of you if they need some insurance?
Well, we have a website, oneinsurancesolutions.com, the
Okay,
number one, insurancesolutions.com, and you can call my office time anytime. Would you like me to give you my phone number?
surely.
407-604-4501.
All right,
Call anytime.
and then you have an email.
Linda
Hmm.
at oneinsurancesolutions.com.
All right. Cool. Well, thank you very much, Linda, and to everybody watching or listening. Thank you very much. Please like the video if you got something from it. Subscribe if you're a fan of the channel or you're getting something out of it. Share the video with people that you think would also benefit from this. It really helps us out a ton. So thank you so much for everything, and we'll see you next time.